I think there comes a point in a man's life where he starts to question whether the path that he's on is really one that he chose for himself. Maybe he wakes up each morning wondering what the point of it is. Not in a nihilistic way, but just having to drag himself out of bed to do something that he's not sure he wants to do anymore. Maybe he's had some success in his career or is running a successful business, but feels like for whatever reason it's no longer enough. And there's a sense of losing touch not only with who he is, but also with his sense of purpose and feeling a lack of fulfillment and connection to both himself and to the outside world. This is a journey that I have been through myself, and this video is about how you as a man can reconnect to yourself and to find a new meaning and a new purpose in your own life. I have been through this exact process, and in this video I'm going to share the exact 4 steps that I use every time I feel like I have dropped out of alignment with myself, and I use it as a process to reconnect and to rediscover what my purpose is. I want to rewind to about 13 years ago, and I was living at home with my dad. I was about 15-20 grand in debt, and I was a labourer on a building site. I was making just above minimum wage, and most of my money was going on servicing the interest on the debt that I owed, and I was absolutely miserable. There was one particular day that I came into work and my site manager handed me a bucket with some cleaning materials and walked me over to the toilet and had asked me to clean up the mess that one of the builders had left in the toilet. I refused to do it, and he told me that if I refused to scrub that toilet that I would have to walk off the building site. And so I dropped those materials and I walked off. That is how I ended up in sales. It turned out that I was really damn good at it, and I ended up making really good money. I had a 6-figure sales career. Because my financial situation changed so rapidly, I was able to get out of debt quite quickly. I was able to move out of my dad's place, get my own apartment. I was able to buy some nice things. I had a nice car, fast motorbike, and I traveled to a lot of places all over the world. I guess after a while, I began to feel that same sense of unhappiness, and it really bothered me. It bothered me that I could have everything that I could possibly want on paper and yet still feel unhappy. That, I think, really began my process of transformation. What I began to realize very quickly was that what all men need, including myself at that time, is a sense of purpose, to understand exactly why we're doing what we're doing. While I haven't reached my ideal life, I have come an awful long way into learning what my purpose is on this planet, and I wake up each day feeling far more connected to my true self, understanding exactly what it is that I need, and feeling excited about getting to do what I do. And for those of you that follow the channel, you'll know that for the last 4 years, I've pretty much been documenting all of that process. And it hasn't been an easy one, but the beauty of having this channel is that I've had a lot of guys reach out to me asking how they can rediscover their own purpose, how they can reconnect with themselves. And it's been such a beautiful thing to help these guys reconnect, to help them feel alive again. That's the only way I can describe it. It's to not feel like you're existing anymore, to feel like you're actually alive, to feel like you're connected to the world around you and to yourself as well. And through this process of coaching guys, I have worked out that there are 4 steps that I went through in my own journey to discover my purpose. And so in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what you need to do step by step in order to reconnect. So the first phase on this journey is about getting a solid foundation laid before we move forward. The first phase is to build a solid foundation, which is based on 3 principles that we need to get right. And the 3 principles are diet, sleep, and exercise. We can overcomplicate this. We can see ourselves as these spiritual beings, but at the end of the day, the vehicle in which we have to navigate this world, the The body that you're in is flesh and bone, and it needs the right nutrients, it needs the right fuel, it needs the right rest in order to perform at its best. If you neglect your car, if you don't service it, if you just run it into the ground, it's going to break down on you, and you rely on that to get from A to B. And if you have an important journey to go on, like you're going to be if you follow these 4 steps, then it is absolutely essential that the vehicle that you're using to navigate these 4 steps is running at its optimum. When it comes to diet, just ensure that you're eating 70 to 80% unprocessed, clean food, as close to what your cavemen ancestors would have had access to as possible. Plenty of protein, lots of fluids, especially water, and not too much junk food or unprocessed. But give yourself a bit of leeway, because you are a human being at the end of the day, and we like to have treats. Sleep-wise, 7 to 9 hours. And that's not 7 to 9 hours in bed, that's 7 to 9 hours asleep. A lot of guys will say that they're in bed for 7 hours, but actually they get into bed and then they scroll through their phones for an hour before they go to sleep. Rest is crucial. It is where your brain resets itself, it's where it processes everything from that day. And without an adequate amount of sleep, you are going to struggle to deal with the challenges that will come up as you go through this process. Exercise-wise, then don't, again, overcomplicate this. If you're completely sedentary, if you do an office job and you don't get much exercise at all, then just work out how you can slot in more movement throughout the day. For some guys, that might be just parking a little bit further away from the office so you can walk in. It might be taking the lift instead of the taking the stairs instead of the lift. It might be going for a walk in your lunch break. It may be joining a sports club. Doing something fun, which also involves movement, makes it feel like it's not exercise. The second phase on this journey is understanding what your core values are. If you are living a life that's in alignment with your values, you will feel far more connected to yourself. And to make decisions and to live a life that is further away from those core values, the more disconnected from life you will feel. And this is a pattern that I see quite often with guys, is that they are living by somebody else's values. In the pursuit of achieving these things that other people value, they sacrifice their own values. You'll probably already get a sense of this because you will be feeling like something's off. And that often comes from the sense of you are making a decision that is acting against your core values. And not understanding these core values is one of the major points in holding people back and keeping guys from feeling this sense of purpose. So how do we find those core values? What I often have guys do is we will look back at their past, some of the key moments in their lives. So anything that stands out as a particularly powerful memory. And then we unpack those. What were the values that you were living by in that moment? How did you feel when you made certain decisions? And the more data points we have here, the more events that we can look at in your life and the more core values that we can pick out of that, the more we start to see a pattern. And these patterns that emerge then give us a really clear idea about what those core values are, about what is really important to you. What I've started to understand as time goes on is the gap between the values that we currently live by and the values that we would like to live by is often the measure of our level of purpose and fulfillment. The more aligned with our values that our life is, the more we are going to feel connected to ourselves and live in more purpose and fulfillment. So the third phase is where things start to get really exciting. So the first phase is where you built up those 3 core habits. You start to feel more excitement and more energy. In the second phase, you worked on your core values. You worked out what is essentially your North Star. And in the third phase is where you start to actually design a life that you might like to start living. This is where you take all of that information that we learned in the second phase, your core values, and we start to imagine what a life in the future might look like if we were to live by those core values. This is about firstly working out where point A is now, what our current life looks like, and then we're looking at point B. So we're going to cast forward to a version of you that is maybe 5 years in the future. What does he look like? What is he doing? Who is he doing it with? How does he feel? Having a really clear, deep sense of the type of person that you would like to become will then inform us as to the goals, the things that we might have to do and the steps we might have to take in order to get to that person. This is where all the work that you've done previously starts to take form. And this is like a really exciting phase. When I take guys through this, it's exciting to imagine not only that, that there's this version of us that we could be, but that it's maybe possible for us as well. So once you've got some goals set, that is time to start working on them. And some of those goals might seem ambitious. They might even seem completely unachievable. So it is really important to break those goals down into much smaller pieces. Maybe the guy that is 30% body fat currently doesn't do any exercise. So what can we start doing to implement that? And once we hit that goal, what is the next step and the next step? And what you'll realize is that getting from point A to point B is really not as hard as you thought it was. And you'll also feel good about doing it, because the more steps you take towards this person that is in alignment with your core values, the more excitement will build up as time goes on, and the more motivated you'll feel to continue this change. People often skip directly to step 3, so don't take any time to work out their core values. And so the goals and the targets that they set for themselves are often based on someone else's values. And then they wonder why they lose motivation. You can't skip any of these steps, but this is one of the most exciting phases, because not only do you start to believe that you could be this new version of you, but you actually start putting in the work. And the more you build, it builds this positive cycle. And the more you work on this, the more excitement builds. The last phase on this journey is where we make sure that all the work that you've done, all the hard work that you have done so far, really sticks. A lot of self-development can get us into these good places, but more often than not, it is very easy for us to fall off the wagon and to fall into old habits. So the fourth phase really is product testing. And companies do this all the time. When a company has a new product that they want to test on the market, they will go through literally thousands of iterations, tweaking tiny little things over and over and over again until they have what they consider to be the perfect product. And we can use this theory of testing on ourselves. We built this future version of us in the last phase, but just because we built this target person that we want to head towards does not necessarily mean that that is who we want to be. And what we might find is that as we start taking steps towards this person, that maybe the values that we thought we had, or the things that we thought were important, actually aren't as important. It is at this exact point where people can start to feel really dejected, and they can start to feel like, what is the point? I might as well go back to doing what I was doing, because I don't feel good now and I didn't feel good before. What's the difference? Why am I trying so hard? This is absolutely key, is a point where to recognize that we haven't failed in this situation, we have simply learnt something more about the type of person that we want to become. We think that going from A to B is a straight line, and it simply isn't. It is a series of jagged movements that hopefully move us in the correct direction. But what often happens is we want to go from A to B as quickly as possible, and life simply just doesn't work like that. So when we have these kinds of expectations, I guess, that we're going to be able to get from A to B as quickly as possible without any hiccups, without any obstacles, then we are setting ourselves up for failure. So this is a way of product testing this new version of us that we want to be, based on all of the value work that we did previously, and being propped up by these 3 core foundational habits that we did in the beginning. Another really important part of this 4th phase is to celebrate our successes. And as men in particular, this is something that we are terrible at. We really need to learn as guys to congratulate ourselves. I guess it feels a bit like we are self-indulgent if we are celebrating our successes, but looking at this from a purely scientific standpoint, when we celebrate our successes, we are raising dopamine in our brains, and it is dopamine that helps us to form habits. So what we are doing is trying to form habits and to prove to our brain that this work that we're doing on ourselves is a good thing. It is stepping outside of your comfort zone is scary, and there is going to be a lot of reluctance. There's going to be a lot of resistance to that. But by boosting these dopamine levels in our brain, we're almost telling ourselves that this is a good thing to do. This is a good path to be on. This whole process really is about acknowledging the work that we've done so far, about reiterating the process as we go along, and about cementing all of these habits that we've built. So there we go, that is everything that I know about finding your purpose, about reconnecting with who you are as a man, and about pursuing a life that is more meaningful based on your core values. And this is the exact same process that I've gone through to help me feel more fulfilled, to help me wake up feeling excited for the day ahead. And I mentioned that if you follow these steps one by one, that you will be able to achieve a feeling of purpose and fulfillment in your life. But for some people, they prefer to work through that process with someone. And that is why I have launched my own transformational journey called Life by Design. I'm currently taking on a very limited number of driven guys that want to go through this transformational process with me. For the first launch cohort, I will be working with you directly one-to-one, and in subsequent future cohorts, the guys will not get as much contact directly with me as you will in this first one. Now, I have already started taking on clients, but if it's something that does interest you, as I mentioned, I've got a limited amount of slots open, and you can find out more about that process by clicking on the link below. If not, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope that everything that you found in this video is useful, and I hope more than anything that you apply it. Let me know in the comments what your plans are and how you're going to start to feel your own sense of purpose and fulfillment in your own life. Thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next video.